Animating snow in Procreate is easier than you think, and I'm going to show you exactly how you can do it, no matter your skill level. Hello wonderful people, it's Genevieve, and my goal here on this channel is to teach you all about illustration and design. So if you're new, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the repeat videos, and so that you can join our wonderful creative community. And with that said, grab your drawing tools and let's get started. So this is going to be a fairly short and easy tutorial. I'm going to show you the basic technique, and you can use this on a solid color background like this, or you could start with canvas on which you already have an illustration. Now, one thing to keep in mind though, if you want to be able to export your animation, you need to make sure your canvas is not too big. So something smaller than 3000 by 3000 should be good. Here I'm just going with the size of the iPad screen. And if you're not exactly sure how to pick your canvas size, I have a video in which I explain everything you need to know in order to make your decision, so I will link that in the description below. So once you have your canvas, whether it is with a solid background or with an illustration, we're going to do a few basic setups first, like adding the snow and everything, and then we're going to animate it. Now here, I'm going to be using the illustration of the skating bunny as my background. Again, you can use whatever you want. If you want to learn how to draw this little guy, by the way, I have the video in which I teach you all the steps. I will link it in the description below as well. And real quick, in Procreate, if you want to import a photo as your background, all you have to do is go in the wrench icon menu at the top, select Add, and then click on Insert a Photo. You're going to be able to go through your camera roll and find what you want to use. So that being said, now that we have our background, you could work again on a solid color background if you want. We're going to draw some very basic snowflakes. So for that, we're going to create a new layer. That's super important. If we don't have a separate layer, we're not going to be able to animate the snow. And we're going to pick just pure white. Now in Procreate, there is a brush, like a snow brush that comes with the software. If you go in really in the bottom of the menu, you're going to have Element, and you're going to see Driven Snow. Now this Driven Snow brush, you can see it's quite dense. So for the animation here, I made a version of this brush that just is a little bit less dense. It's really the same thing, and I called it Simple Snow. If you want to download it, you can see there's just fewer snowflakes. So if you want to download it, I will also link in the description below. It's totally free. It's really just going to be helpful having fewer snowflakes to not overwhelm the image after the animation is done. You could also, if you want and feel like it, hand draw these snowflakes individually. So at this stage, honestly, all we want is to just fill in this layer with a bunch of snowflakes like this. Now, in order to have a little bit more depth in our snowflakes, I like to create a new layer and add even more snowflakes and make these new ones bigger. Now, that's totally optional. If you just want to have one layer, that's totally okay. That being said, what I like to do is just go back, create a new layer, draw a bunch of snowflakes, and then make them really big. So using the arrow tool and just zooming in quite a lot. So you can see that adds a lot of depth in the illustration. And I also like to add a little bit of a Gaussian blur on this layer to make them look like, you know, they're not necessarily in focus. So just going in the adjustment panel here at the top, selecting Gaussian blur for the entire layer, and then adjusting the blur by swiping the finger towards the right to increase the blur and then towards the left to decrease the blur. So just finding something that you like. I'm gonna go with a blur around, I don't know, 8%, 9%? Yeah, something like that. And in order to add a little bit more softness and add as well to the depth effect that we have, we might want to lower the opacity of this first snow layer around 80%, something like that. It just blends a little bit better with everything else. Awesome, so at this stage, we're ready to activate the animation assist. So just going in the wrench icon menu, selecting the Canvas option, and then animation assist is going to be this option here that you can just activate. So you're going to see in the bottom, we're going to get this new menu with a bunch of little frames. So the way Procreate creates frame is just, it takes all the layers and all the group, and each layer or each group becomes a frame. So for example, if we click here, if we click on play, we're going to see that we're actually getting an animation that goes through all the different frames that we have, which right now makes absolutely no sense. So how do we fix that? Well, the first thing we need to know is have the background stay as the background and not part of the animation. So to do that, just go ahead and click on the frame of the background in this menu here and tap on it again, and it's going to be allowing you to set it as the background. If for some reason you don't see this background option, it is probably because your layer is not the last one in the list, so make sure it's right above the background color layer. If there's something in between the background color layer and your image, you're not going to be able to set your image as a background. So just make sure that is in order. So now if we click play, we're going to have the background stick as the background, but it's going to flash between the two snow layers that we have, which is definitely not what we want. We want them to stick together. So we're just going to group them by swiping them with one finger towards the right and then clicking the group option. We're then going to be able to collapse the group, and now if we click play, nothing moves because we have the background which stays still, and then we only have one frame. So in order to create an animation, we're going to need to create multiple frames with the snow, and between the frames, the snow is going to be moving. So you can kind of think of this animation as a flip book. Now, if we go in the settings, we're going to see here at the top, we have three options: loop, ping pong, and one shot. These are just the order in which the frames are going to go. So loop basically starts from the first layer to the last layer and then jumps back to the first layer, which is the one option that we're going to use. Now, frame per second, this is not really the right definition of what it is, but in this case, just think of it as the speed of the animation. So for now, I'm going to set it at 4, but you can set it and experiment. It's going to depend on how much movement there is between your snowflakes. Onion skin frames, that is not affecting the final result. It's going to affect what you're going to see while you're working on the animation. So in the animation assist, for now, we're going to set it at 2, and the rest we don't have to touch. Now, if we go ahead and rename our first snow group we have to Snow 1, that's going to be very helpful. And then we can swipe it towards the left with one finger to duplicate it. And make sure that you rename this new group to Snow 2. So now we're going to open up the Snow 2 group, and we're going to move the far away snow layer. So just using the arrow tool, you're going to be able to move it a little bit. And since we have onion skin frame, you're going to be able to still see the snow that is in Snow 1 as well. So that way you're going to be able to see how much you need to move your snow. I'm going to move mine a little bit towards the bottom and also towards the left side of the screen. And since this is going to create a gap on the top and on the right, I'm just going to go back to my simple snow brush and add and kind of fill in the gaps on the side. So now if we click play, there is an animation because it's going back and forth between the two snow groups that we have. That being said, the snow in the foreground doesn't move. So we're going to go back in our snow group 2 and move this big snow. Now, since this snow is closer to us, we're going to move it more. So it's going to be going down more and left more than the snow in the background. So just go ahead and do that. And here you might need to erase the top of some of the snowflakes that were on the edge so that they don't cut super clean, because that looks really, really weird. And if we click play, now we can see that everything is moving just fine, and we're kind of starting to see how the animation is going to play out. So I personally, I'm going to add even more version of the snow to make the animation a little bit more interesting and not just kind of just a basic loop of 2. So just duplicating the Snow 2 group and renaming it to Snow 3. Then selecting the snow in the background, the Snow 3, moving it downwards and to the right this time. So we're going to alternate, kind of create a zigzag pattern basically to make it look like it's a little bit softer and flowier than, for example, rain. So just doing that, and once more we're going to fill the little gap. It's going to be this time on the left side and on the top. We're also going to move the snow in the foreground, so again using the arrow tool, and this time moving it downwards and to the right as well. And now we're gonna have a little bit of an issue. So we have a big gap on this foreground snow now, but if we just go ahead and draw on it, we're not gonna be able to zoom in and add Gaussian blur. So what I personally like to do here is create a separate layer, zoom that layer in, add the Gaussian blur on that layer, and making sure it roughly matches what we had initially on the other foreground snow layer. And once we have them both, we can just merge them together. So something a little bit like this. So that way you're going to be able to fill in the gap at the top without having to add more Gaussian blur on the bottom. Hopefully that made sense. But But yeah, if we click play now, we can see that the animation looks even more interesting because it's not just 2 frames. So you can repeat these steps for how many frames you want. I'm going to go ahead and create 6 so that my animation is really interesting and is not just a super short loop. And don't forget that every time you move your snowflakes, you kind of alternate. Sometimes you move them towards the right, sometimes towards the left. So creating this zigzag pattern that is going to make them look like they're super light and kind of flowing in the air. And with that, it is time for the secret password. So if you've watched this part of the video, please go ahead and comment snowstorm. If you're new on the channel, you might be like, what's the deal with the secret password? Well, it's something we're doing now in every video. People seem to really like it. It gives me a lot of insight into how to edit and pace my videos better, which helps me to create better tutorials for you guys, and that's what we all want after all. It's also really cool because you guys know me. You see my face in the intro, you hear my voice throughout the entire video, but I have no idea who you guys are. And whenever you leave a comment, I get to see who's part of the creative community that we're building here on this channel, which is just super cool. And it's also fun for you guys. I know a lot of people are watching the videos and are looking forward to hearing what the secret password is going to be. It's kind of this little exciting thing. So anyway, so just leave a comment with the word snowstorm and then we're going to keep going. So again, you can just create as many versions of these snow frames as you want. I'm going to go ahead and create 6, and then I'm going to show you how to export it. There are a few things that you need to know in order to, for example, be able to upload your video on Instagram. When you're happy with the number of frames that you have and kind of the flow of the animation in general, feel free to go back in the settings to play with the speed of the animation. So that's something that you can always change throughout the process to see if you want a really intense snowstorm or just a casual light little snowfall. But there is one thing to keep in mind though. If you want to use your video on Instagram videos need to be at least 3 seconds long. So depending on the speed of your animation, well, depending on the frame per second and the number of frames you have, you might need to duplicate your frames. So in order to know how many frames you need, all you have to do is take 3 seconds and multiply that by the frame per second that you chose. So for example, if we have 3 seconds and a speed of 7 frames per second, we just multiply, 3 by 7, which equals 21. So we need at least 21 frames. So all you have to do here is you can go ahead and duplicate your snow groups and just reorganize them so that they're still in the right order, and make sure that you have, in my case, it would be 21. So just duplicating until you have 21 layers total or whatever you need. And if everything is in order, you should be able to click play and the animation should be the same. Even if you duplicated your layers, it's just going to, add more frames, which is going to increase the length of the video that you're going to export. And to export, all you have to do is go in the wrench icon menu, click share, and at the bottom here, click animated MP4. Now make sure here that the frame per second that you have matches or is lower than the ones you have in your settings, and then you can just click export at the top. You're then going to be able to select save video, which is going to save the video on your camera roll, so with the other videos and pictures you have on the iPad, which is then going to allow you to just share it wherever you want, so Instagram, Facebook, even YouTube if you need to. And if you enjoyed this video and want to learn how to create more holiday themed illustrations, I highly recommend you check out this playlist in which I'm going to teach you exactly that. But before you leave, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the weekly videos I post every Tuesdays and Saturday. And then click on the link right here and I'll meet you there.